David is in Slough. David, what would you like to say?
Okay, yes. I mean, we talk about misleading and lies in the debate, and there's one particular term which the pro-EU people keep talking about, and I want it substantiated. They keep using this nebulous term, clout, in terms of trade. If we weren't in the EU, they keep saying, we wouldn't have the clout to negotiate free trade. But what they've got to do is demonstrate that countries outside the EU, such as Switzerland, Norway, and I believe Iceland, are getting poorer trade deals with the rest of the world.
It's a very good point that you make, but I am going to steer you towards last night's events, because I think, unfortunately, you've already made it clear. I can already tell what you thought, and you thought it before the debate, and you thought it still afterwards, yes. Which is that Nigel Farage won, and if he'd been left in a bloody heap on the floor, you'd still be ringing me up to tell me that he won.
No, I wouldn't. No,
well, I wouldn't. We can't prove that now. This is why you should have gone in on the debate instead of your anti-EU, very powerful anti-EU opinions.
Yeah, but James, it's about the substance. This debate.
So what happened last night?
Well, what happened last night? Nick Clegg also said the NHS would collapse. His words.
Yes.
NHS would collapse if we left the EU. Now, you talk about Nigel Farage saying things which aren't true and giving these... well,
that's an opinion, isn't it? That's not a statement of fact. 75% of laws are made in Brussels is not an opinion, I thought. And then, as Ferrari pointed out last night, Mr Farage, I believe, said he'd made that number up.
Well, he had said the number was an estimate. In fact, the Germans say it was 84% of German laws, and even Gordon Brown admitted it's over 50%.
And no one can ever tell me what they are?
Well, possibly not, but it's
But doesn't that bother you a bit? I mean, I appreciate you're looking for detail on the question of whether or not the NHS would collapse, but if someone tells you that 75% of our laws are made over there, don't you worry slightly that they can't tell you one of them?
Well...
Can you tell me one of them?
One of the laws made it... Well, there are lots of regulations regarding trade and industry.
But laws? 75% of laws, David?
Yes, but laws are things you have to obey.
So tell me, what do I have to obey because of Brussels that you don't want to?
If you're a manufacturer, you have to obey... Well, you're not.
75% of laws. There must be one that affects me.
Somebody does.
Yeah, but 75%, man. There must be one.
Do you employ anybody?
I don't know. Why?
Well, if you employed somebody, there may be regulations...
Well, tell me one. Like what?
Well, I don't exactly know.
Well, this is where the debate always goes, and I apologise. It was your fault, for diving into the anti-EU rhetoric before you told me what was going on with the debate. I wasn't going to pull that why can't you name a single law cat out of the bag until a little later in the hour, but you couldn't. So nothing could have happened last night that would have persuaded you, because you're absolutely convinced that laws you can't name are ruining your life.
Last night, Nick Clegg and Nigel Farage went head-to-head in the LBC leaders' debate.
This is a leaflet that Nigel Farage's party distributed in the recent Eastleigh by-election. You may remember it. It says here that 29 million Romanians and Bulgarians may come to this country. There aren't even 29 million Romanians and Bulgarians living in Romania and Bulgaria.
I'm not claiming 29 million people have the right to come to Britain.
Yes, you do.
I'm claiming 485 million people have the total, unconditional right to come to this country if they want to.
Hear reaction and analysis with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. This morning from 7, only on LBC.
20 minutes after 10, and it's that exchange there in the big debate last night that, for me, constituted the penny dropping. Because when Clegg said 29 million people, you lying rascal, Mr. Farage, there weren't even 29 million people in the country, which was true, there weren't. But he completely deflected that and instead said 450 million, at which point people get scared. And I understand why. But it is utterly, utterly bogus. I'll explain why in a moment. 21 minutes after 10. Tony's in Bounds Green. Tony, what do you think?
James, I'm a UKIP supporter, but I don't want you shouting at me straight away, because I find that's what you tend to do these days. What's interesting is who is actually making policy. Immigration...
Can we talk about last night's debate? I'm saying that very quietly.
Let's talk about last night's debate. If you look at the immigration issue is a very complicated one. We've ended up with being pro and anti, rather than who actually makes immigration policy and how many people should be allowed to come and go. We've got a fake argument between those who are anti-immigration and those who are pro. It's about the numbers and about who makes the decision.
What happened last night?
Well, what happened last night is Nigel Farage made a great point that a government, or in fact a constitution, our now constitution, has given unalloyed rights of 485 million people to come.
So that number resonates with you, my friend?
Well, it's not the number, it's the fact nobody knows the number. That's the great crux
I
of
thought
it.
you just said it was 485 million.
I'm talking about the actual number of people that will or will not come in.
So the thing that you're frightened about, you don't know the number.
I'm not frightened about it.
Troubled, concerned.
No, I'm not frightened. I don't think a responsible government should have no immigration policy whereby nobody comes or huge numbers of people.
But don't you have to gauge your reaction according to the scale of the problem rather than the potential problem?
Well, you cannot doubt that we've had a massive immigration into this country in the last 10, 15 years.
But it hasn't been a problem.
Well, it hasn't been a problem for you, but I can assure you it's been a problem for a lot of people.
How has it been a problem for you?
Well, if I go to a school and I want to put my children in a school and I'm told that the first thing I'm told is that they have a prayer room. The second thing
Did that happen to you?
Yes, it did. And a lot
Where's
of teachers...
the school?
Can I just finish?
Well,
and a lot of teachers...
actually, I want to clarify a couple of details first, and then you can finish. Where's the school?
I'm giving you the details.
Where's the school?
I'm giving you the details.
What's it called?
And teachers wearing badges saying, I speak Bulgarian.
What's the school called?
Broomfield School.
Whereabouts?
In North London.
And they have a prayer room that you think is a result of EU migration?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I mean,
so that would be Muslims, would it?
What you've got to do is let people speak rather continuously interrupt.
No, Tony. What I have to do is highlight the detail of the claims that you're making. So Broomfield School in Bounds Green has a prayer room that you think is full of Muslims who've come from the EU.
I don't like the way you say "full of." I'm talking about priorities. What you're doing?
No, you're not. You're talking about a prayer room.
What you're doing? You talk.
Let's just clarify the details that you've said.
I am clarifying.
So the prayer room. Who is the prayer room for?
I'm clarifying.
Who is the prayer room for?
You do not believe there are pressures.
We're talking about a debate from last night, and you're talking about a prayer room in a non-existent primary school.
Well, let's talk about the debate last night. The debate last night was about who governs Britain.
Hang on, I think we've got the school on the. Have we got the school on the line? Can you talk to them, Tony?
Oh, this is a form of bullying, isn't it?
Why? You just named the school. I think we've got them on the line.
You really don't understand.
Can you talk to them about the prayer room and the badges, or not?
You don't understand what's going in the country. You don't want to talk about it. This is the problem.
Tony, do you want to clarify the point you made, the first point you made about prayer rooms, or do you want to challenge my view that people who support UKIP will always start telling fibs?
Oh, that's what you do to people. You say, "Oh, tell me any laws that have been passed by Europe."
Well, go on then, tell me.
Well, there's loads. I mean, if you look at, well, for example, when it comes to setting pay rates in the city, bonus control, you're going to say, well, that doesn't matter because they're just bankers. What we've got is a setting of pay by the European group on the UK employee. That is an important point. If you look at having your rubbish collected, that's linked to landfill taxes, which are linked to Europe. If you look at energy policy...
Tony, can I take them one at a time, or will you accuse me of interrupting you?
Yeah, you can take them one at a time.
Thank you. So whose pay is limited by Brussels?
Well, what's happened is they put a bonus cap, for example, on various financial groups, that a bonus can only be a certain multiple of salaries. The other thing they've done...
And that is a problem, why?
Well, because what you've got there is an overseas supranational group setting wages...
How does that affect you, Tony?
It affects everyone, because...
Tom, come on, mate. I'm trying my best not to fit into the horrible portrait of me that you've painted. How does it affect you that bankers...
If you let me finish, what you've got there effectively...
Where should you start?
You've got an incomes policy being set from Europe, and we've had incomes...
But how does it affect you, Tony?
Because what is next? Why have they
No. What next might affect you, but what's happened so far, how does it affect you?
Well, what it may mean is effectively that people may move or reduce activity in the city.
How does it affect you?
And they may go to various tax... Sorry?
How does it affect you?
Well, because you're just going to keep going on that.
Yes.
Of course it affects me. Because it doesn't just have to affect me. It affects
but I want to know how it does, Tony, that's all. How does it...
Well,
I mean, it's a point of passion for you. I respect your passion, I truly do.
Okay.
How does it affect you?
It affects me because a power that we have not voted for is setting the wage rates of residents.
I thought we did vote for people like Nigel Farage. He's an MEP, he's an elected representative.
I'm talking about the European Commission.
Okay, how does the bankers' bonus cap affect you?
It affects me because who is implementing the bonus cap?
No, that's a question. How does it affect you, my friend?
Because what it means is we're ceding control.
It's a bit like the prayer room, isn't it? It's like the prayer room. It feels awful, but when we really look at it hard, there's nothing there. LBC continues to spread across the country, and the more people listen, the more help I get in presenting the programme. So, for example, the bonus salary cap that Tony was referring to, it's capped at 200% of a banker's salary. It can be overrided by shareholders. So all you have to do to override this bonus cap is get the shareholders to pass it, and it is estimated to affect just under 0.1% of the population, the very, very highest paid people in the country. You are perfectly entitled to think that's outrageous. But I personally can't imagine why you would, unless you were one of the people who'd had your salary capped and your shareholders had decided not to override the guidance from Brussels. It's a bit odd, isn't it, this debate? Because every single time we have it, people get really, really cross, and don't have a single fact with which to prove the points they're getting cross about. Today will be different. I know it will. I know that we will learn something today that has currently eluded all of us who see UKIP and hear xenophobia. 34 minutes after 10, we've spoken to the school mentioned by Tony in Bands Green. They haven't got a prayer room. They've never had one. That's why I get cross. I know sometimes you don't like it when I get cross. If people lie to you, I'm getting cross on your behalf, especially when they're lying about things like that. You say, how has this immigration problem affected you personally, as opposed to you're affected by people like Farage throwing around meaningless numbers that they admit they've made up? How has it affected you personally? And Tony said, I don't want to go to a school with a prayer room. Name the school, he named it, we phoned them up, they haven't got a prayer room. I'm really sorry, guys. That's why I get cross, because people lie to you. Well, this is in a way, this is where I get depressed, Nassar, because I think what you describe is the fact that people have very, very deep-rooted feelings about these figures, like 485 million, but it's an utterly meaningless figure. And the penny that dropped for me during that clip was the point I made to Sue about pregnancy. If you are frightened in any way or troubled by faceless foreigners, and I'm getting quite a lot of criticism for getting cross with that caller earlier, so I will stress, we've checked and he was lying to you about prayer rooms in a primary school. That's why I got cross, because I knew that was a lie. You can smell it a mile off. You care so passionately about immigration that the only point you can make when you phone the biggest radio phone in town, the only point you've got is a lie. So how have you been affected by immigration? Well, I will tell you a lie to prove what a big problem. You shouldn't need to lie if it's a big problem. And if you need to lie, it's not a big problem. You are the problem. Farage feeds that. So logically, if I now stood up and said, if we don't sterilise every woman in this country now, the population of Britain could be 200 million by the end of next year. That is a completely meaningless, spurious statistic. There's about as much chance of that happening as there is of me playing in the FA Cup final. But it's as relevant as what Farage says about 485 million Europeans. So it's a personality issue. If you're frightened of faceless foreigners, with no evidence whatsoever to justify your fear, you're on his side. If you're not, you're not. It's that simple. And a million debates, I don't think, would change that for anyone. You are listening to LBC, where you continue to deliver your verdict on the big political debate of the year so far between Nigel Farage and Nick Clegg, live and exclusive on this radio station last night. Phone lines are open, incredibly busy. I'm also struggling yet again to stay friends with people who are passionately allied to UKIP's so-called policies. Just to recap on what's happened so far. When asked exactly what laws from Brussels affected the first UKIP supporter, he told us how cross he was that bankers' bonuses have been limited unless shareholders vote against the limit. So the people who led us into the financial precipice, being reined in slightly from the excesses and the greed that brought the world to its knees, that's a problem, apparently. And that also affects us all, apparently. Sorry to sound facetious, but it's an apparently. And the second one, how has mass immigration affected you, Tony? Oh, well, I took my child to a school and it had a prayer room. Well, first of all, I don't think Islamic immigration has much to do with the European Union. Much. I mean, it strikes me that it's probably countries outside the EU that are more obviously allied to Islam. And secondly, we rang the school, they've never had a prayer room. So that's why I get so scared. Because nice people are being lied to, and then they're believing the lies, and then they're getting angry with people who point out that these are lies. Scary stuff. Scary stuff. It puts one in mind of the late Tony Benn's 5 rules for questioning those in power, doesn't it? It really does. And if they can't answer your questions, we should all be concerned. And I really mean this. I mean this so sincerely. Why would somebody convinced of their position, convinced of the rectitude of their position, need to fib. That's what I don't understand, and that's what scares me. So when Farage says that he's got a problem with a train full of people talking a foreign language, in his own mind, has he forgotten that his wife is German? Has he actually forgotten that when his wife phones home, she speaks German? When his wife's relatives come to visit and they go on a train, they probably speak German on the train. I don't know whether she speaks German to their children, but his children are the children of immigrants. His children have English as a second language. The definition of mother tongue is fairly straightforward. So when he comes on the radio or the telly and starts talking about how awful it is that all these children have English as a second language, has he actually forgotten that he's talking about his own children? What the blithering blithers is going on? How can it be? Did you see? Look, by all means, despise me and my nasty lefty bias, but how can somebody talk about their own wife and children in a way that's designed to whip up anti-immigrant and anti-children of immigrant feeling? Doesn't that terrify you? Even if you think he's right about everything else. And then when you say, where did you get this figure from of 75% of our laws are made in Brussels? Oh, I made it up. It's an estimate. It says 485 million people could come here. Everyone could leave tomorrow. The country could actually be empty tomorrow. That is as likely as 485 million people coming here, or 29 million Romanian and Bulgarians. It's not a matter of choice. It's not like people get up in the morning and say, I choose to believe exaggerations and lies. It's more subtle than that. But if I said to you, if we don't pull out of the EU, Britain could be empty by tea time, you'd laugh at me, right? We've got to leave the EU. We've got to close our borders. The country could be empty by tea time. That makes as much sense as saying 485 million EU residents could come here. Help. Because this is an ugly debate, an ugly conversation, and it always gets ugly whenever Nigel Farage and UKIP are on the agenda. People are so hateful. I think I'm pretty hateful as well to people who phone me up and tell racist lies. You'll indulge me on that. But why do people who think he's right have to be so hateful? Just when it is pointed out to them that he's wrong. If he says himself, oh, I made that up. He says himself, oh, I'm married to an immigrant. It makes him a hypocrite. Why does it upset people so much to see the reality behind the mask? I don't understand, and I'm hoping you can explain. It's 11 minutes after 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. The conversation is about last night's debate. The undercurrent, as it always is, whenever UKIP comes up, and I mean, honestly, the C words coming in via Twitter, the really filthy insults. All I've got to ask you is this. Why do you believe lies? And why do you get so cross with people that show you the dishonesty of the claim? So 485 million people could come here. That's not a lie, but nor is this. Britain could be empty tomorrow if we don't close our borders. If we don't sterilise every childbearing woman in this country now, the population of Britain could be 200 million by the end of next year. Did you know that? Therefore, we must sterilise women. That's his argument. We must stop immigration because there could be 485 million. So I just point out how ridiculous that is, and get cross with me. It's not fair. We are raking over the coals of last night's conflagration and finding some surprising and unsurprising nuggets therein. The unsurprising one, sadly, are people convinced that we're all going to hell in a handcart because foreigners who, when pushed for evidence, can provide precisely none. None whatsoever. Two recurring themes in these conversations. We're ruled by Brussels. What rules do you object to? Don't know, can't name any. We're being overrun by immigrants. How has it affected you? Oh, there's a prayer room at my children. Is there? No, actually, I lied. That's it. So why? Listen, if I was frightened of something and you could show me that I shouldn't be, I'd shake you by the hand. In fact, if I was feeling European, I'd kiss you on both cheeks. So why, if people are frightened of foreigners and it's pointed out to them that they shouldn't be, they're being lied to, why don't they say thank you? Why do UKIP supporters get crosser and crosser and crosser the more ridiculous their arguments are revealed to be? And why does the popularity grow? That's easy to answer. Because the flames are being stoked with nonsense. But it's dangerous nonsense. I use an analogy of believing that the moon's made of cheese. But actually that's a pointless analogy, because what you're doing is demonising faceless foreigners. A non-existent army of faceless foreigners. That's why people say, I'm not racist, but. Because they say, but, I know someone and he's all right. But the faceless foreigners, all the foreigners I don't know, they're ruining Britain. Give me some proof. Oh, you live in Chiswick, you won't know. Oddly, do you know what the statistics, all the research shows? The longer you live in an area with a high net immigration, the more tolerant you become. I don't know whether my tolerance is born of growing up in the Black Country or living in Ladbroke Grove for 5 years. I remember walking up and down Harrow Road, and it was you'd see as many women in burqas as you would in Western clothes. I never remember feeling intimidated by that. I understand that alien is sometimes intimidating, but it's oddly the people who live in those areas who end up most tolerant. It's not people who live in leafy suburbia who are arriving at their tolerance through a lack of exposure. It's exactly the other way around. UKIP's core constituencies are sort of seaside towns full of pensioners with barely an immigrant in sight. They're the people that are convinced that 485 million European migrants want to come here. The ones that never see any. So when you point out to someone scared that they shouldn't be scared, when you tell people who are paying hundreds of pounds a year to the Dragon Slayer that dragons don't exist, why don't they say thank you? I want you to answer that question. And I'm conscious of how upset people get when they have their prejudices pointed out to them. No one likes being told that they're wrong. But it's so blindingly obvious what this man is. How can so many people be misled? And even the stuff about gay marriage, we're a Christian country. He's a serial adulterer. That's one of the 10 Commandments. I don't care about his private life particularly, but if he talks about other people's private life, about my gay friend's right to get married, I'll talk about his. He's broken the 10 Commandments. He boasts about it. But also, how dare anybody introduce a law that means my employer can't force me to work more than I should have to? It's just such a strange thing to get angry about. The one thing that I think the fishing quotas is quite an interesting piece of policy, and it's great that Farage sits on the committee that sets fishing quotas. Unfortunately, he's attended one of the last 43 meetings of that committee. So, to me, if I was tempted by the fella, that's all I'd need to know. His wife's on the payroll, and he's attended 1 out of 43 meetings of the fishing committee that he claims is one of the most egregious areas of European law. That's it. That's game over. See you. Sayonara. I can stay Eurosceptic, but I need someone who tells me the truth. But they'll say the opposite. If we don't let bankers carry on helping themselves to whatever they want, whenever they want, they'll all move to Singapore and we'll sink. And the analysis continues, although with that ever creeping sense of dread inevitability. I wonder if anyone encountered last night's debate and came away from it with their mind roundly changed. I don't know. Probably not. For me, rock and a hard place picking between those two political leaders, although they are great ornaments to this radio station. I find them politically and to a degree morally bankrupt, both of them. Clegg's so-called coalition has involved the surrender of anything that resembled a principle, whereas Farage is the worst kind of rabble-rousing demagogue, as is proved so easily by just tearing off his mask for a split second and showing you someone who cheats on his wife and puts her on the payroll, having pledged that he never would. And that's just dodgy behaviour. But it's a refreshing change. Resigns as chairman of a family company 6 weeks before the revenue issues a winding up order for unpaid tax. But he's on the side of the taxpayer. Explain to me, seriously, what I'm missing. Because I'm missing something. Stephen's in Bromley. Stephen, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I'm quite surprised that the NHS hasn't been brought up, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. I mean, where would that be without immigration?
Well, where would it be? Well, let's look at the state it's in now.
I remember the last time I met an English nurse.
Oh, exactly. You go in there, you're not being funny, you've got the old people that are fair enough deaf, and they can just about understand English people. Then you've got foreigners. You know, I'm not nothing against foreigners, but you can't understand them. Old people are finding it hard to understand what they're saying, and things are going wrong. My granddad got OD'd on morphine a few times in hospital. Why? Because foreign nurses, again. You know, our country can't keep up with the increase of foreign aid coming to this country.
So you think we should have fewer nurses, or we should really quickly train up some British people?
It's not that. It's all the cuts that are happening. Immigration that's coming to this country. Our NHS can't cope as it is. And
hang on, I'm a bit confused. Are you saying you don't want foreign patients, or you don't want foreign nurses? Or you don't want either?
Nurses, no, because not being funny. Yeah,
I know.
Foreign nurses are probably better than British nurses.
Right, but they were responsible for giving your granddad an overdose, I thought you said.
No, foreign nurses, doctors, which are highly paid, skilled people.
Right.
But if there wasn't NHS, if it wasn't for foreigners come to this country, you have to go and wait for 4 hours. There's so many foreigners in front of you.
Right.
You start, hang on a minute, if they wasn't here...
And how did the debate last night play for you?
Well, I don't follow none of them, so... I'm not going to say the party I lead, because you'll call me as a racist as the guy who said about a praying room in the school.
No, I called him a liar.
No, you called him a racist.
No, it was a racist lie to claim there's a prayer room.
How can you class that as a race against an ideology?
Oh, okay. Because we were talking about immigration.
Yeah, no, I was talking about immigration.
Right.
And the same with the
you
school.
can answer your own question then.
No, but the same with
Why
the
is
school.
immigration so awful? Because there's a prayer room in my school. There's two responses to that.
That is just stupid to say that about immigration.
Well, thank you. I agree.
Yeah, but the fact that you say the guy's racist...
Well, why else would you tell a lie to make someone think ill of foreigners? What word would you use?
But a race is against a race, isn't it? Not a religion.
Stephen, if you tell a lie that is designed to make somebody think badly of foreigners, how would you describe that lie?
I won't describe it as racist because it's a bit of a harsh word.
What would you use then? What word? Because here I'm going to tell you a lie that is designed to make you think badly of foreigners. What is it? If it's not racist, what is it?
Well, it's a lie, isn't it?
Yes, what sort of lie?
Well, people lie to get the votes.
Who is it designed? Who is it designed to hurt? That lie.
Well, it's designed to hurt immigrants, isn't it?
Right. So it's racist. Gavin's in Folkestone. Gavin, what would you like to say? And let's steer things back now to last night's discussion, last night's debate.
Okay, fine. Hi, Jay.
Hello, mate.
Yeah, actually, what I want to speak about is, I found last night that actually people keep on saying about this inherent racism that's coming from the country, and I don't actually think that's actually right. I think people are looking for a way out. I mean, if you look at Nick Clegg yesterday, what does he say any different from David Cameron and anybody else on there? They're all singing the same propaganda, but actually Farage is quite refreshing. Some of his views may be a bit far out, but he's probably talking some realism. There's anger out there in the people, and
there was a lot of anger during the Salem witch trials, but witchcraft never existed. I mean, people are angry at things that don't exist.
No, but people are angry at our government, which has got us into a situation.
Why are you angry?
I get frustrated with the fact that every party talks exactly the same thing. There's no difference in the parties these days, and it becomes a bit of a monopoly. If you had one retailer like Tesco running the world, all of a sudden things would be pretty bad. There's no competition out there.
What makes you angry? What is it Farage speaks to within you? What is it he says that makes you go, yeah?
So I just think he speaks in common sense.
Give me the bones. Put some flesh on the bones. Go on.
Okay, so within Europe, for example, he's talking about Europe at the moment and saying, well, okay, do we want to be part of that? Do we want to keep letting people in?
Well, the Conservative Party's full of people saying that.
Yeah, but do they actually do anything about it? And do they actually speak to the people?
They do as much as he does. So you think he's right when he warns about...
He speaks in a language people understand. That's the difference.
Well, he speaks English.
Well, no, he's speaking in a language that people understand. He's speaking in a way that people understand. But
you're not, if you'll forgive me for saying that. So apart from saying there's a massive tidal wave of European migration around the corner, which there isn't, let's remember what he was saying in December about all the Romanians and Bulgarians that were going to arrive on January the 1st. Why do you think everyone is so keen to forget that? They didn't arrive. Why aren't people relieved? Why don't they go... and I'll ask you this. Pardon?
People are relieved, but they also, in the fact that we still have immigration at such a high level where, people are losing jobs, but also the people that are working hard.
But all of... this is where I say, can you provide any evidence of that, apart from what people like Nigel Farage tell you?
Well, I mean, can you provide the other way?
No, I asked first. I'm not cross. Can you provide any evidence of what you've just described, apart from the fact that Mr. Refreshing has told you that it's true?
Well, no, the fact is, but I don't listen to Nigel Farage as the gospel on
No, but I'm just saying to you, can you provide any evidence of what you've just described without making reference to the man who told it to you? I mean, can you actually see it with your own eyes, or do you just hear him saying it?
Yes, I can see it day to day. I mean...
tell me about the people who've lost their jobs because of immigration.
So, I have people I know who've been in sort of railway working on the contracting for Network Rail. People like this who've lost jobs.
But that's not because of immigration, Gavin, is it?
Yes, it's because it's cheaper labour. Yeah,
so they chose to be unemployed rather than paid less?
Well, no, but people also have a cost of living here.
I'm looking for evidence. So people who were offered a pay cut and chose to be unemployed instead and got replaced by foreigners.
Who couldn't afford to do it on that money.
But they can afford it on unemployment. But they can afford it on unemployment benefit.
But then what's the thing? They just can't afford to do it.
So what are they doing now? What are they living on now?
They're trying to find other jobs.
So they're living on unemployment benefit?
Well, no, not all of them, because some of them have been trying to put money together or help with family, have moved into different situations, we're moving back.
Okay.
But problem is here, we've got £1.25 trillion worth of debt.
No, the problem here is that you make a sweeping claim like that about people who've lost their jobs because of immigration, and you don't really know any.
Well, no, there is. I know lots of people that have become out there. Probably more today because I'm probably more involved in the day to day. Whereas,
but you don't know any.
That Farage is the right person.
I respect you, and I'm grateful for your call. But all you've done is tell me what he thinks, and then repeat some of the nonsense that is spouted by people like him, and pass it off as evidence and truth. You don't know anyone who's lost their job because of an immigrant, do you?
Yeah, I know lots of people.
Well, tell me the story then. Tell me the story.
Okay, security. So I've got a friend who works in security, but you want specific examples.
Yes.
But then, okay, my friend works in security on the boats, for example. He worked out there as a security, looking after big oil trunkers.
Where?
He was doing out that in Nigeria and across the African coast.
Well, that's not, my friend, come on. That's a Nigerian job. Being done by an immigrant in Nigeria. It's 11 minutes to 12. Good grief. 8 minutes to 12. So, again, give me some evidence of the jobs being taken away by immigration. Caller convinced. Just before the travel. Absolutely adamant. You live in such a bubble. I know lots of people. Tell me about one of them. All right, my mate lost his job on a boat in Nigeria because of immigration. Just save me, please. Save me. Tell me what it is that I'm missing. All of these people lining up to be mean and nasty to me. And all I'm asking for is evidence. Give me the evidence immigration was bad for you. Well, there's a prayer room in the school I nearly sent my children to. We rang the school. There's no prayer room. Give me the evidence that laws made in Brussels affect you. Name one law. Well, they've put a limit on bankers' bonuses. Are you a banker? No. Is it a limit that can be overridden by shareholders? Yes. Does it affect anybody except the people, perhaps, who led us to the brink of disaster by their greed and ineptitude? And then, finally, show me the person. Who is this person you know who has lost their job because of immigration? And we end up talking about a boat in Nigeria. I'm not making this up. The phone lines are open. If you feel that your position is being badly represented by the people getting through, 0845 606 0973 is the number to call. And even the one that I think you would have to be made of flint not to respond to, the building trade being undercut by people from outside, coming here and doing the job for less. And they say about the Poles what they said about the Irish, they said about the Jamaicans, they sleep 10 to a room, they do the job for nothing. That's why you need stronger employment law. And where does most robust employment law get framed? Well, according to UKIP, it's Brussels. So you should be pleased. The stronger the employment law, the more protection of jobs you get. The other thing you can do to protect jobs, I think, is join a trade union. Where do UKIP stand on that? It's 11:53. You're listening to James O'Brien. 6 minutes till mystery hour. My God, I'll be ready for it. Luke's in Bromley. Luke, what would you like to say?
Hi there. Love the passion. What a great subject. Right. Firstly, Farage won. Basically because, unlike the Liberal Democrats, he has something to talk about and he stands up for something. He doesn't change his mind partway through and so on. So he has a better argument. And I'm glad that he's about because he spread a good message that we do need to keep everything in balance. However, you had a guy, the caller before called Stephen, who said that the NHS should not have immigrants in and that they're a problem. What a load of tosh.
It's a popular position, and I think if you're made a certain way, you sit in a waiting room and you notice the skin colour and the language of other people in the waiting room in a way that you don't register when you actually get shown through to the treatment room and you meet somebody else who may well hail from overseas.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Listen, I'm married to a nurse who's black and from another country, and we've got lots of friends of a similar thing. So I guess I'm a bit more aware of it, and I know how capable some of them are and how much more effort and work ethic they put in than the so-called white ones that are here and know that they can get another job.
That's in a way that's almost a bigoted. Backwards bigotry. You can't make a sweeping generalisation about white people any more than anybody should make sweeping generalisations about non-white people. So I'll mark your card for that, Luke. But, of course, the point about the nationality of the nurse being irrelevant, but the nationality of the patient being of massive importance. And also, who's killing the NHS? The patients or the government? The patients or the politicians? Simon's in Sevenoaks. Simon, what would you like to say?
Now, the thing is about it is that I'm actually quite distraught that the main two parties in this country won't actually entertain the debate. And
But what is the debate? I mean, what did you hear last night that you learned from?
Well, basically, you have two intrinsically different points of view, and it's about the sovereignty of this nation. Who decides where we go forward from here? What is best for us?
We do. We always have. We always will.
Now, you have one person who come across as the professional politician, to my mind, briefed, I hear, by the Whitehall Mandarins on quoting facts and everything.
Quoting facts, I know, it's awful, isn't it?
And then you had the other guy who spoke from the heart.
And didn't quote facts, because he hasn't got any.
Well, maybe he has.
75% of laws are made in Brussels.
I don't know.
Well, let me refresh your memory, because I heard this clip. 75% of laws are made in Brussels. Nick Ferrari asked him where that number came from. He said, well, it's the figure we've made.
Well, what I heard was that he said it was an estimate, and that
so it's not a fact, is it?
The German president said it was 84%, and it's rather difficult.
And neither of them can name one. Can you? I mean, we're nearly done, so let me get my party trick out. So is that all right, Simon? Can I get my party trick out now?
Yeah, of course you can, James.
What's the law you wish you didn't have to obey that Brussels brought in and imposed on you?
Well, I think it is the one where EU citizens must be treated the same as British citizens in this country. I.e., you have somebody who's born and brought up, they pay taxes all their life into the system, including national insurance.
Yes.
And they are entitled to benefits when they find themselves on hard times. Now, someone could come in to this country, they could take a job, from day one, they then qualify for in-work benefits. Or if they've been here for 12 weeks, they then qualify for all the state assistance that someone has paid into for all their life.
I like that. It's a good answer, but let me... It's a very good answer. Don't stop the music. I don't want Simon to be curtailed in this way. I respond to that very, very simply by saying, I understand that. I understand where it comes from. But what you're effectively saying is that you want people to be treated according to their ethnicity, according to their nationality.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
You are, because what about someone born here who's never worked?
But they're intrinsically linked to this nation.
No, but they've never worked. They've never paid a penny in. And then here's someone foreign who's worked for 5 years, and you resent the fact that he's allowed to have...
No, but
an
maybe
in-work benefit. And the other thing,
their parents have,
maybe they have, but this is the point. Maybe they haven't. Maybe that foreigner's grandparents lived in this country and emigrated to Australia, and he's come back. And the other thing, the other really important thing, Simon,
the guy from Australia. The guy from Australia is actually restricted.
All right, Bulgaria then. Maybe they're
country.
Bulgarian. I'm just pointing out you can't do that. You can't ask everybody at the door to pull out their family tree before you decide whether or not you're going to treat them with dignity or not. And the phrase you used, Simon, in-work benefits. What does that mean? Again, it means people aren't being paid enough by their employers. Who pulls the strings of the employers? The city. Who does Nigel Farage claim are the people we need to protect and look after more than any other in Britain? The city. The financial services industry. The brokers, the bankers, the spivs. The people who led us to the brink of destruction. People who, for example, maybe resigned from a company 6 weeks before it was wound up by the Inland Revenue for owing over £100,000 worth of tax. You've never done that, Simon. I've never done that. The Farage fella has. Mystery Hour next. Oh.